And we talked a little bit about how you're trying to get developers to trust you. Talk about elaborate more on that process. Like you have data to show them like this is how much you're selling, here's is how much you're losing, and to get them to actually say just give us a DRM-free license. Like talk about that process, how you convince them to trust you. Like get a little bit more in depth in that conversation.
Yeah, I think like the answer here is quite simple. Like they learn about it firsthand themselves by seeing that they are enjoying new revenue stream coming from GOG. They don't see any impact on sales elsewhere. So this is actually, they are getting access to a brand new audience that is buying only on GOG because our audience really cares about the same values that we care about, right? DRM-free, games preservation, we love classic games, we love bringing back old classics. We have a very fair refund policy, 30 days. So all of those things that we are super excited to provide to our audience, that's the reason they return. So initially, going back to what Marcin said about publishers being sometimes reluctant to launch games on GOG, we usually call it phantom sales. So this is what they are so fixated on, like, oh my God, like I'm not gonna sell these, I don't know, X number of copies elsewhere because it's gonna be DRM-free on GOG. They never think about the number of copies that they will actually sell on GOG because they are accessing this community that up until this moment was not even within their reach. So this is usually how this starts. And as soon as games start popping up on GOG, as soon as the publisher grows their catalog, they see that we actually become this source of additive sales to them. So those concerns like get dispelled on their own pretty quickly.
Yeah. We sometimes also have some numbers to show them, like for example, a game is launching simultaneously on Steam and on GOG, and then on Pirate Bay, actually the version with the most seeds is the Steam one, not the GOG one. So it's a.
So I'm curious, do you guys have more issues trying to convince larger AAA publishers and developers to give you DRM free, or is that the indie side easier to work with? Because I would assume the indie side would be easier to work with to convince them to do DRM free licensing, but I'm not sure. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, from my side, I can say that it really varies and it depends on the developer. For some of them, and I'm talking about the AA, AAA ones, it doesn't really matter because we as a company, and let's not forget that we also make games ourselves, right? And we had our AAA games released on GOG day one, talking about Witcher 3, talking about Cyberpunk. So we already have proof that you can enjoy enormous level of sales of AAA games and not be afraid that this is going to impact your business.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's not dependent on whether this is a AAA or an indie developer. More and more it's becoming about resources because you can see how many platforms and consoles there are out there. So there is an opportunity for you around every corner, right? So it's really about picking which platforms you want to go first to, and then which platforms would be your second choice, third wave, fourth wave. So this is really more about it. But yes, there are still some developers that are, I would say, by DNA, simply DRM-free is a no-go. So I would love to have games from Japan. Like this is like a holy grail of the classic games that we are still trying to get. We've had some degree of success recently, but this is still proving to be quite challenging.
Yeah. Funny thing about pirated copies is, or your games being pirated, is that it also seems to have a positive effect on your sales. Because a lot of people, as it turns out, because we noticed that while talking with some of the publishers that had giveaways for their games on other platforms. So a lot of users, it seems, are using the pirated copies as basically demos to see if they're going to like the game or not. And because, like I said, when we talk with some of the publishers that had giveaways on a platform, for example, B, then it turned out that when they had a giveaway of one platform, they saw a huge increase in sales on another platform, because people are simply using the platform with the giveaway to check out the game, and then they bought it on the platform of their choice anyway. So like I said, it can also have a positive effect on your sales.
No, you're right. I mean, some companies will see like, hey, these people are pirating this game you made 10 years ago because it's not available anywhere, and then like, oh, there's a market for it, and they'll do a remake or a re-release or something of that to capitalize on that, because like sometimes it does raise those flags. Like, why are people pirating this old game? Oh, they want it. Okay, let's re-release it. That kind of stuff.
That's also what we've noticed, that because many of the games that we've released on GOG over the last couple years, and talking specifically about classics, like they were not available anywhere. So the only way to get them was through torrent sites, right? So the moment we put them on GOG, suddenly it turns out that like there's a huge demand for those titles, and people are gonna buy them, like regardless of if they have the pirated copy or not. They will probably delete the pirated copy because they want to have a legitimate version, right? And also, what I like to call our communities, we see that they simply cherish collecting games. To have the collection of games that they enjoyed playing when they were kids, and now they have those proper copies that work, that we made sure that work even better than they used to all of those years ago. And it still works, and I'm happy to say that even though sometimes it might take years to convince some developer or right owner to get their game over to GOG, they also realize that, and they are really grateful that we convinced them to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it is like people don't understand. I think people really don't understand like the forward thinking of DRM-free gaming. Like God of War is a good example because everyone loves that game, right? Imagine a world where 50 years from now Sony's out of business, but you have God of War on your PS4, and you go to put it in, and now you can't play it because the servers are shut down. And you just have this game, everything's there, but you can't officially play it in any capacity because the servers are down. And that's what you guys are really fighting for, that you have that 20, 30, 40 year down the line thinking of, look at all these games that are digital now that people might not have access to if these companies go over or these servers go under or whatever. I know it's Sony, it's a big company, but things can happen all the time. I mean, look at us. In the US, we had a market called Sears. They were the biggest retailer in the United States, almost. One of the biggest ones. They went out of business a couple years ago. They were the biggest, like one of the biggest department stores in the United States, and they're gone. But now imagine that for a game developer or game studio that has servers you have to connect to. Now you're screwed. Now you have to play it unlegitimately. You have to emulate it somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Anything can happen. And there's actually a very recent examples of multiple games being stripped out of, for example, the access to a DLC with Ubisoft taking a lot of the services down. So there's a good example here. Bethesda, the launcher, it's no longer supported. People needed to move their licenses to other platforms, and so on and so forth. So anything can happen, right? With GOG, it doesn't really matter because you own those games. If you have them downloaded, they will be available. It's simple as that.
Now, what can a normal gamer or a casual person, a consumer, do to help you guys support this DRM-free stuff you're trying to do? Like, how can they help GOG make this stream a reality and make it more consistent?
Yeah, well, the answer is simple. Like, come to our storefront, register, buy games, buy them for the second time to show gratitude to developers that they trusted us and that you respect their decision. This is actually quite common, that people come to GOG to buy the second copy because they feel like, okay, so this is the way I'm gonna thank the developers, because now I can have the game. So it's really about that, and we get a lot of positive feedback, a lot of love from the community. So we are being told constantly that we are doing the right thing. But but when it comes to gamers and how they can support us, it's really that, lad. Buy games on GOG, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, it's actually that simple because it solves all of the problems and it helps us to basically invest in the service that we are providing. It helps us to get more games DRM-free because especially with bigger companies, it's all about numbers. We can do whatever if the numbers are right. We can go, practically speaking, I would say that we can get any game that that exists to GOG if the numbers will be good enough for the publisher.
Let's plug in your socials, like where can people go to interact with GOG and their staff and your community, your Discord, Twitter, website, forums. Can you guys plug all those in so they can go to talk to your company and express their concern or their, you know?
But apologies for that, because we were thinking about, we were talking about going to GOG, creating an account. What we basically mean is just become part of the GOG community.
Yeah.
Right. That's the most important thing, because it's there are many titles that we released on GOG because people from our community were also a part of the developers or the publishers community, and they basically asked them to also bring the game to GOG platform. So our community in a lot of cases was a huge help in bringing those titles to GOG in the first place. So this is extremely important. And carry the message and be active on social and make people, all of those big publishers, developers and stuff like that, think about also the need some gamers have, and for the DRM-free title, for a DRM-free version that will basically immortalize the games, so to speak, on those users' shelves in their collections.
And then like you said too, it's funny because there's companies like Night Dive Studios and Ziggurat Games. Like, I've even heard of Ziggurat Games, but they take really obscure 90s PC games that just been lost to time, right? Or either lost to time or had DRM and they can't be played anymore, and now they're releasing them. And they're not like remasters or remakes. They're just like, they just take the code and they kind of spit it out again. It's really cool to see companies finding that niche, and hopefully we don't have to have a company trying to find that niche, because the games will be DRM free in the future. Single player, stress again, single player games. We're not talking about like Fortnite here, games that require a server to play anyway, but we're talking about single player games that, are still very prominent in our gaming libraries today. Last of Us, God of War, like Sony has a lot of single player games. Sonic Frontier, single player game. Like a lot of these are all single player games, and it would be a damn shame if you couldn't play them 20 years from now because the server shut down and Sega went out of business.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of the reasons GOG to keeps on existing, because games get old really quickly. And right now we are talking about a 10-year-old game. For me, it's like a pretty modern title, right? So in 20 years, that game will be considered like the Diablo of classic games on GOG, and it will be a still pretty fresh title. Like for my younger siblings, it probably will be a game that they remember playing when they were young. So I think our mission is gonna continue, because this is like a natural life cycle.
There will be
circle of life, right? Of video games.
There will be, as time passes, there will be more and more games that are considered classics that have some technical issues because they were released 10 years ago. The servers might be down. And this is where GOG comes in and takes all of those titles and basically refreshes them and makes sure that they still work. Because this is actually something I found out that surprisingly that it's not a common knowledge, that we are actually personally responsible as a GOG on our technical, our QA teams for the maintenance of hundreds of titles on GOG. Those are not maintained by the developer. The builds were made by us, they are maintained by us, and if something new comes in the future, new operating systems, we will get back to those titles and we will make them work again. So this is something that I think no other company is doing and will be doing. So this is very unique to GOG.